Hello, Frederico here once more to spew random nonsense that no one asked for. In today's video, I'm going to be considering what works so well with the Dawn of War expansions. That includes Winter Assault, Dark Crusade, and even Soulstorm. I make my love for the Dawn of War game no secret, and while I intended to simply do a video based on the base game itself, I realized just how much of my fond memories of playing Dawn of War stem from the use of the expansions. The base game provided everything needed for a great Warhammer 40k game, but it was the expansions that made it a truly exceptional experience. Imperial Guards, Necrons, and even Sisters of Battle. With each expansion came a new playable faction and some additional tech upgrades and units for established factions. While some of the added game mechanics were questionable, like adding flying units to Soulstorm, which I didn't really see a point, the overall experience was enhanced by each subsequent release. Of course, a large part of that had to do with the ability to play a different faction in multiplayer, but the single player campaigns were consistently enjoyable enough that I was able to return to the game in 2020, what year is this? 2019, and still enjoy what was available.
Embarrass the Emperor today by dying! Watch your flanks and protect the Titan's crew! There! More come to die!
While the Winter Assault campaign was short, it did a really good job of immersing me in the scenario. And short campaigns tend to only be a problem when they're actually good. So there you go. I felt pressed against it on almost every mission, and while I wasn't a huge fan of switching between Eldar and Imperial forces, I did see the value in it as the campaign wrapped up. Admittedly, I would have preferred a straight Imperial Guard campaign as opposed to the hybrid Forces of Order campaign or Chaos if you wanted to play on the evil side, but still, it's no less memorable. Replaying it once more before making this video and about a decade since I last played, I still found it engaging. However, I must admit that some of the fun was taken away simply because I knew what to expect and where to concentrate my forces. But this is an issue that nearly every RTS campaign faces, so not so much a negative, just a reality. Anyway, Winter Assault truly enhanced the Dawn of War experience, not so much by simply introducing the Imperial Guard as a playable multiplayer faction, but by providing two well executed campaigns that didn't just stick with what worked in Dawn of War, also tried something new. And while I wasn't that into the whole switching thing, it was fun. I admit that I enjoyed, especially in the last Eldar, missing switching between the Imperial Guard forces and the Eldar forces, which made the situation just feel that much more dire.
In the name of the Emperor, finish this!
As good as the Winter Assault campaign was, and still is, it's Dark Crusade that really cemented Dawn of War as a game with significant longevity. A multi-facade campaign structure that lets you play as anything from Space Marines to the enslaved automatrons known as Necrons. The way the campaigns played out also reminded me of Emperor Battle for Dune, one of my all-time favorite RTS games, so that's a huge positive in my book. There was a bit of technical issues getting the game to run at the resolution I wanted and some stuttering in certain points of the game, but nothing that really got me frustrated or just made me throw my hands up and say this is unplayable. Playing the campaign today was just as fun as I remember. Admittedly, I'd rush all the minor provinces till I got to the capital province, but it's still no less fun using the various armies to take control of the planet. Upgrading your commander with each province captured, pushing to a province to gain its unique abilities, as one of my most favorite features of the game was how some provinces had these unique objectives that you had to meet to be able to attain that province's special ability. Then there's also the defensive feature where if an army attacks the province you recently captured, most of the buildings are still in place, so defending it becomes really easy and you don't have to just drag out defending each province if an army attacks. Anyway, the final capital province were effectively challenging enough that it didn't feel like you had to get through it in a minute or two, at least not the first time around. And the backstory provided for each faction, while a little forced, worked well enough to make me want to play each faction to see how it turned out for them. When I heard Space Marines were going to fight the Imperial Guard after coming off the Dawn of War game, I felt this is going to be kind of contrived, but it actually worked well for what was going on in the planet. When it comes to Soulstorm, it's really just more Dark Crusade. However, I was and am completely fine with more Dark Crusade with added bells and whistles. What I mean by that is the general framework of Dark Crusade is kept, everything is just made more grand. One of the most notable things was the flying units, which really didn't add much to the gameplay. In fact, going back and playing through it as the guards and then the sisters, I didn't really find myself using any of the flying units in the campaign. They just felt extraneous to what was already there, and the whole flying mechanic thing just felt throwaway. The campaign itself builds off Dark Crusade, and instead of conquering a single planet, you're working your way to take control of a whole system. While this might sound extremely grand, it's really only a few more provinces to conquer than in Dark Crusade. Nevertheless, attacking faction strongholds was still the highlight of the campaign for me, as in just about every other territory I would simply rush to win. And then of course the same defensive mechanic is still there, where most of your buildings are kept whenever a faction tries to retake a province from you. Oh, I almost forgot, Soulstorm also added my favorite space lands to the mix, so that was a huge plus. Anyway, the story is interesting enough to make you want to play as each faction, and the same engaging gameplay continues from Dark Crusade. Soulstorm really just felt like they wanted to go big and introduce it as much as possible before moving on to Dawn of War 2, which was released just a little after Soulstorm. And in that regard, I think the expansion does an excellent job of portraying this system-wide conflict that is thoroughly engaging to play. Ultimately, taken together, all three of the expansions plus the base game offer a truly enjoying, fulfilling, and captivating experience. From playing the narrative-driven campaign of Winter Assault to the more open-choice planetary and then system-wide conquest of Dark Crusade and Soulstorm respectively, the campaigns really build on what was already a great game in Dawn of War. While Soulstorm was released over a decade ago now, I would still consider all three of these expansions and the base game of Dawn of War a title worth playing in its entirety, even without a multiplayer component. The replayability of the game is not that high, as once you're finished playing the campaign as each race, really not much else to do but play skirmishes. But that does little to take away from the longevity of the game. Even after a decade since the release of its last expansions, it's still a really great game. Well, that wraps things up for me. But before I go, Space Marines win Dark Crusade, the Imperial Guard win Soulstorm, and I'm pretty sure the Eldar run away with it in Winter Assault. Anyway, that's my canon. Till next time, remember to always purchase corn for your cornflakes.